Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Hey everyone, welcome back. You guys sent in some really fascinating research about new stem cell therapy for eye injuries, and I gotta say, this stuff is pretty mind-blowing.
It really is.
We're talking like reversing damage that was, considered permanent before, and so that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah.
We've got two sources to look at.
Okay.
A press release from Mass Eye and Ear, who are leading this research, and then the actual published study in Nature Communications.
Excellent.
So the big question here is, how close are we to actually reversing what we thought was like untreatable eye damage?
Right.
Let's find out.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, so the press release on Medical Express talks about this new stem cell treatment. It's called CAE.
Yeah.
And it's showing some really impressive results in a clinical trial. They're repairing corneal damage that was, until now, considered irreversible.
Right.
I mean, before I even looked at this research, I didn't even realize that the cornea could even, regenerate like that.
It's pretty amazing. The cornea is, it's the clear outer layer of your eye, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's the window that lets light in and helps focus it onto the retina.
Right.
Which then sends signals to your brain so you can see.
Okay, so if that cornea is damaged,
Yeah.
it can really mess with your vision, right?
Absolutely. Like if you had a burn or a chemical splash,
Yeah.
it could severely affect your vision.
Wow. So this is where Limbal Stem Cell Deficiency, or LSCD, comes in.
Yeah.
The press release mentions that this is what the CALEC treatment is going after. What exactly is LSCD?
Sure. So LSCD is a condition that occurs when the limbus, which is the outer ring of the cornea, is damaged. Specifically, it affects the limbal epithelial stem cells that live there.
Gotcha.
Those cells are critical because they constantly renew and maintain the cornea surface.
So without them, you can't really heal properly.
Right. The cornea can't repair itself properly. It can become clouded, scarred, and ultimately impair your vision.
So I thought that corneal transplants were like the go-to treatment for these kind of issues. Why don't they work as well for LSCD?
Well, corneal transplants can be successful for other types of corneal damage.
Okay.
But they often don't work well for people with LSCD because if the limbus is damaged and those stem cells are missing,
Right.
the transplanted cornea often can't properly integrate and may even be rejected. It's kind of like trying to plant a flower in soil that can't support its growth.
Right. It's not going to grow.
Right.
That's a great analogy.
Thank
I
you.
can only imagine how frustrating it must be for people living with LSCD, knowing that, a standard corneal transplant might not even work for them.
Absolutely. Can significantly impact daily life.
Yeah.
They have persistent pain, blurry vision, and even sensitivity to light.
And the article mentioned that this CALEC trial is the first of its kind here in the U.S.
It is. Yes, this trial is the first human study for eye treatment
Wow, that's huge.
in the U.S., which makes it groundbreaking.
And the results are pretty amazing. They said there's like a 79% success rate after a year,
It's remarkable.
which is amazing.
Yeah.
Like you're taking a few cells and you're basically growing a new part of your eye.
Right.
So how does this two-stage CALEC process work? I know the Nature Communications article explained it, but can you give us the simplified version?
Sure. So the first stage involves taking a tiny biopsy, which is a small sample of tissue
Okay.
from the patient's healthy eye. This sample contains those crucial limbal epithelial stem cells. They take those cells to the lab and they cultivate them in a special environment where they multiply and grow.
So it's like a mini cornea factory in the lab.
Exactly. Then stage 2,
Okay.
they transfer the lab-grown stem cells onto a special biological membrane
Okay.
called an amniotic membrane.
Got it.
And this membrane acts as a scaffold,
Mm-hmm.
providing a structure for the cells to attach to and grow on.
Okay.
And then they carefully transplant this entire construct onto the patient's injured eye.
And then it actually starts to work.
It does. It integrates with the existing eye and starts functioning.
That is incredible. I was looking at the photos in the Medical Express article, and there's one with Dr. Jerkinus performing the first CALEC transplant
Yeah.
back in 2018.
Right.
And it just makes you realize, wow, this is real. This is actually happening.
Absolutely. It's really a testament to the incredible advances in regenerative medicine.
And of course, with any new procedure, safety is a big concern, right?
Right.
I mean, what does it look like with CALEC?
Well, from what both sources describe, the safety profile for CALEC seems to be pretty reassuring.
Yeah, the Nature Communications article specifically said there were no serious side effects from the treatment.
No serious side effects related to the treatment itself.
They did mention one patient who developed a bacterial infection.
Yes, but that was unrelated to the procedure.
Right.
That was linked to the patient's contact lens use.
Oh, wow.
Not the CALEC transplant.
So it seems like, at least based on this trial, it's pretty well tolerated?
It seems to be, yes.
That's great news. But I know this treatment isn't available to just anyone yet, right?
It's not. You're right.
So where do things stand with getting it out to the people who actually need it?
Well, you have to remember that CALEC is still considered experimental.
Okay.
It hasn't gone through all the approvals required to make it widely available.
So what are the next steps then?
Well, larger multi-center trials are needed.
Okay.
These trials would involve more patients from diverse backgrounds and medical histories, allowing researchers to confirm the initial promising results and demonstrate the effectiveness of CALEC on a much larger scale.
So they just need more data.
Right. They need more data. More evidence.
That makes sense. I seem to remember reading something about using donor cells for this procedure.
Yes, that's another exciting avenue that they're exploring. The potential for an allogeneic process.
Allogeneic. Now remind me, what exactly does that mean?
Sure. It essentially means using stem cells from a donor instead of taking them from the patient's own healthy eye.
Oh.
Think of it like an organ transplant.
Right.
This would be a huge advancement.
Right.
Because, as we've talked about, the current CALEC procedure only works if the patient has one healthy eye to donate cells from.
Right.
But an allogeneic process would open up the possibility of treating people with damage in both eyes.
That would be incredible.
It would remove a huge limitation and potentially help so many more people.
Exactly.
Dr. Chirkun has mentioned in the press release, their goal is to make this treatment as widely accessible as possible, which I think is really inspiring.
It is inspiring.
To see that dedication to improving other people's lives.
Yeah, and this goes way beyond just treating eye injuries, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, this feels like a major step forward for stem cell research as a whole.
It does. It really does.
So we've covered, what CALEC is and how it works, but now I really want to know, what does this research mean for the future of stem cell therapy in general?
Right.
Where else might we see these breakthroughs happening? That's what we're going to explore when we come back.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, so we're back and we're ready to keep going down this stem cell rabbit hole.
Yeah.
CALEC is pretty amazing on its own.
It is.
But I'm even more excited about what this means for the future of, regenerative medicine,
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge paradigm shift. For the longest time, using stem cells to repair damaged tissue was like pure science fiction.
Right.
And now we're seeing that it can really work.
It's like we're on the edge of a whole medical revolution.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing researchers looking into stem cell therapies for things that we thought were untreatable before. Spinal cord injuries, Parkinson's, even heart disease.
The potential is incredible.
What about organ transplantation? If we could grow healthy tissues from a patient's own cells, then we wouldn't need donor organs as much.
Right.
Which would solve so many problems.
Absolutely. It would totally change things for so many people.
Not to mention the cost savings for the healthcare system.
Absolutely, yeah.
But of course, this is still early days, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's still early days for regenerative medicine. There's a lot more research and development to do before these therapies are widely available.
But we're making progress.
Absolutely. The progress is definitely encouraging.
It seems like every day there's a new breakthrough.
It does, yeah.
I know researchers are exploring all different kinds of stem cells and ways to use them.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement around induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs.
Okay.
Which are basically cells that are taken from adult tissues.
Okay.
Like your skin or blood.
Okay.
And then they reprogram them back into an embryonic-like state.
Wow.
Where they can potentially turn into any type of cell in the body.
So you're basically turning back the clock on those cells.
Exactly. Giving them the potential to become heart cells, brain cells, anything.
So what are some of the challenges that scientists are facing with all this?
Well, one of the biggest is making sure these treatments are safe and effective.
Right.
Because stem cells can differentiate into all these cell types. But we need to make sure they're only doing what we want them to do.
Okay.
And not forming unwanted cell types.
Gotcha.
Or causing any harm.
We're asking a lot of these cells.
We are. There's also the question of scalability and cost.
Right.
Right now, a lot of these therapies are very expensive and time-consuming to develop.
Yeah.
And we need to find ways to make them more accessible and affordable.
So it's not just about the science, it's about making it work in the real world.
Right, exactly.
From getting it to everyone.
Absolutely.
What about public education?
That's important too. Stem cell research has been controversial.
Right.
And we need to make sure people have accurate information.
Yeah.
And understand what's really going on.
We need to be having these conversations.
We do.
Yeah.
Transparency and open dialogue are so important.
Yeah. This has been a really interesting conversation. I mean, it's amazing how far we've come in such a short time.
It is, isn't it?
And it feels like we're just getting started with stem cell therapy.
I agree. It's a very exciting time.
I think it's important to remember that it's not just about scientific progress.
Right.
It's about compassion, too.
Absolutely. It's about improving people's lives and helping them.
Right.
The human element is at the heart of all of this.
So we've looked at the science, the possibilities, and some of the challenges, but there's one more thing we should talk about.
Okay.
Ethics.
Right.
We've talked about how stem cell therapy works, the success rate, and how it could change so many lives.
Right.
But any new technology raises ethical questions.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're going to talk about when we come back. And we are back for the final part of our deep dive on stem cell therapy.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. Yeah, we've talked about the science, the potential.
To treat these conditions that we never thought we could treat before. But now I think it's time to step back a bit.
Yeah.
And look at the bigger picture, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It's important to remember that science doesn't happen in a vacuum. You know, we unlock these new possibilities with technologies like stem cell therapy. But we also have to think about, you know, what the implications are.
Right. It's not just can we do it, but should we do it?
Exactly.
And where do we even start with something as complex as this?
Well, I think one of the things that often comes up is the idea of access and equity.
Okay.
You know, like we've talked about, right now, CALEC and other stem cell therapies are still pretty experimental.
Right.
And they're expensive.
Yeah.
And so that raises concerns about who's actually going to be able to get these treatments and how can we make sure that they don't just become something only for the wealthy.
Right. So it's kind of this double-edged sword.
It is.
Where you have these amazing treatments that could change people's lives.
Right.
But at the same time,
it could make healthcare inequality even worse.
Exactly. And that's why it's such a complex issue.
Yeah.
It needs to be approached from a lot of different angles.
Yeah. And we really need to think about ways to make sure that everybody can benefit from this.
Absolutely.
Not just the people who can afford it.
Right.
So are there other things, other ethical considerations that researchers and policymakers are thinking about?
Well, another big one is unintended consequences.
Okay.
You know, we're still figuring out the long-term effects of this therapy, and we have to be really careful. What if there are risks or complications that we don't even know about yet?
Right. It's like with any new technology, there's always some uncertainty.
There is.
And we have to balance the good with the bad and make sure we're not creating more problems than we're solving.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to have rigorous testing and monitoring.
Right.
And to be upfront with patients about the potential risks.
Yeah, we need to be transparent about what we know and what we don't know.
Absolutely. And patients need to understand all of that before they agree to any treatment.
Right. Informed consent is so important.
It is. And it's not just about signing a form.
Right.
It's about having real conversations with patients. Answering their questions and making sure they have all the information they need.
Yeah. This has been a really eye-opening conversation.
It has.
I mean, the ethical side of stem cell research is just as important as the science itself.
Yeah, I agree completely. So as we wrap up, what would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to remember?
I think it's that scientific progress and ethics have to go together.
Yes.
We can keep pushing the boundaries with stem cell therapy and all these amazing technologies, but we have to do it responsibly.
Absolutely. We have to have these conversations about what it all means and make sure we're not getting ahead of ourselves.
Right. We're not just dealing with cells and molecules. We're talking about people's lives.
Exactly.
It's a huge responsibility.
It is. It's really exciting to be a part of this.
It is.
But we have to remember that with great power comes great responsibility.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into stem cell therapy.
Wow.
We've learned so much from the amazing science to the potential to change lives, to the ethical considerations that we all need to think about.
It's been a really fascinating exploration.
It has.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.